Every human being is born with the potential for greatness, but within that same potential lies an invisible enemy, fear. It lives quietly in the background of our decisions, in the shadows of our ambitions, and often in the silence of our hearts. The 6 basic fears and how to conquer them is not merely a book about psychology, it is a mirror that reflects how fear quietly governs our lives and how liberation from it can lead us into the fullness of our spiritual and material potential. The author begins by unveiling a truth we often resist, that fear is not our enemy but our untrained protector. It is a mechanism born of survival, but when left unchecked, it becomes a master instead of a servant. The 6 basic fears, the fear of poverty, the fear of criticism, the fear of ill health, the fear of loss of love, the fear of old age, and the fear of death, are not random emotional reactions, they are deeply rooted spiritual obstacles that shape human behavior at every level of life. Each one whispers in our subconscious, directing our thoughts, limiting our choices, and creating invisible chains that hold us back from peace, love, and fulfillment. The first fear, the fear of poverty, is the most universal. It doesn't just refer to money, but to a fear of lack itself, the lack of security, status, comfort, or control. It makes people cling to jobs they hate, silence their creativity, and trade their passion for stability. The author reminds us that the fear of poverty is not about money, but about mistrust in the abundance of life, in one's own abilities, and in the unseen intelligence that provides for those who act in faith. To conquer it, one must replace worry with purpose. Faith is not blind optimism, it is active confidence that the universe responds to courageous, disciplined action. A person who walks with faith may still stumble, but they never remain fallen, because they understand that failure is not loss, it is guidance. Then comes the fear of criticism, a quiet destroyer of dreams. Many people never speak their truth or follow their calling because they are afraid of what others might think. Society teaches conformity before it teaches authenticity. We learn early that approval equals safety, and disapproval equals rejection. But in truth, every great soul who has ever lifted humanity has been criticized, misunderstood, and mocked before being respected. The cure for this fear lies in self-approval, the inner alignment between who you are and what you do. When your conscience is clean and your purpose is noble, the opinions of others lose their power over you. The author tells us to walk with integrity and let time become the ultimate judge. Remember that even the most radiant sun casts a shadow, and those who walk in light will always be seen and spoken of. The third is the fear of ill health, which arises from our attachment to the body and our misunderstanding of its relationship with the mind. The author reminds us that most illness begins not in the flesh but in thought. Worry, anger, resentment, these are poisons that slowly corrode vitality. Yet, the same mind that creates illness also creates healing. Modern science now echoes what ancient wisdom has always known, that the body responds to belief. People who expect sickness tend to attract it, those who cultivate gratitude, calmness, and purpose strengthen their immunity from within. The book does not dismiss medical care, rather, it teaches that the mind is medicine's most powerful ally. The body is the instrument of the spirit, treat it with respect, but never worship it. Health is not merely the absence of disease, it is the harmony between thought, emotion, and action. The fourth fear, the fear of loss of love, pierces deeply into the heart. It is the fear of abandonment, betrayal, and emotional pain. This fear often disguises itself as control, jealousy, or dependence. It makes people grasp tightly at relationships, suffocating the very love they wish to preserve. The author offers a liberating truth. Love cannot be possessed, it can only be shared. True love is not an exchange of need, but a communion of freedom. To conquer this fear, one must first learn self-love, not the kind that inflates the ego, but the kind that honors the soul. When you are whole within, you do not fear being left, because you no longer see yourself as incomplete. You begin to realize that love is not something to acquire, but something to radiate. The fifth fear, the fear of old age, reflects our misunderstanding of time. Society worships youth and treats aging as decline, yet the author reframes it as transformation. Age is not loss, it is accumulation of wisdom, grace, and clarity. Those who fear aging have attached their worth to appearance or productivity, forgetting that life's true purpose is growth of consciousness, not accumulation of achievements. To conquer this fear, one must live with intention, to plant trees under whose shade you may never sit. Each passing year then becomes a blessing, a step closer to spiritual maturity. The soul does not grow old, it only becomes more luminous through experience. And then, the most profound of all, the fear of death. This is the mother of all fears, for every other fear is a fragment of this one. The fear of death arises when we identify ourselves solely with the body and the material world. We fear what we do not understand, and death seems like an end because we have forgotten that life itself is eternal movement. The author invites us to see death not as extinction, but as continuation, a doorway, not a wall. He reminds us that those who live fully and consciously never fear death, because they have already transcended it through love, purpose, and service. When you live in alignment with truth, you no longer seek to escape death, you simply trust that life continues in forms beyond our current perception. The book gently weaves all 6 fears into one insight, that fear thrives in ignorance and dies in understanding. To conquer fear, one must replace it with awareness, not denial, not resistance, but deep understanding of what it truly is. Fear is energy. When we face it consciously, that same energy transforms into courage, intuition, and faith. The mind that once imprisoned us becomes the very tool that liberates us. The author gives many examples from life. A man who loses his job and fears poverty, but later discovers his hidden talent and becomes more fulfilled than ever. A young woman who suffers from constant anxiety about criticism, until she learns to create for the joy of creation, not for approval. A patient who regains health by changing his thoughts from fear to gratitude. A widow who transforms her grief into compassion for others. An old teacher who, instead of fearing aging, spends his days mentoring the young, passing on his light. In each story, we see that the key to freedom is inner mastery, not external control. The book reminds us that fear cannot be eliminated by force, it dissolves only through love and knowledge. Just as darkness disappears when the light is turned on, fear disappears when truth is seen. The author encourages us to use affirmations of courage and daily acts of faith. Even the smallest step taken in faith, a conversation we were afraid to have, a dream we were afraid to pursue, a truth we were afraid to speak, becomes a declaration to the universe that we are no longer slaves to fear. One of the most transformative lessons is that fear and faith cannot coexist in the same mind at the same moment. Each thought you entertain is a choice between the two. Fear believes in limitation, faith believes in possibility. Fear waits for proof, faith creates it. When you consciously choose faith, your inner frequency rises, attracting better opportunities, healthier relationships, and clearer intuition. Life begins to respond to your courage. The author concludes with a call to awaken, to recognize that fear has ruled humanity for too long, creating wars, divisions, and despair. But now, the collective soul of mankind is being called to transcend fear and remember its divine nature. You are not meant to live small, anxious, or uncertain. You are meant to live as a creator, calm, confident, and connected to infinite intelligence. Your fears are not walls, they are invitations to grow beyond your limits. So take a moment to look at your life. Which of these 6 fears has quietly guided your choices? Which one has kept you from expressing your full truth? And can you, even for one day, choose to act as though you were already free? The book assures us that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to move despite it. Each step taken in love diminishes fear's power, until one day, you wake up and realize that what once terrified you has become your teacher. The 6 basic fears and how to conquer them is more than a guide, it is a journey into the soul's strength. It teaches that liberation is not a distant goal, but a daily practice. Every thought of gratitude weakens the fear of poverty. Every act of authenticity weakens the fear of criticism. Every affirmation of health weakens the fear of illness. Every act of self-respect weakens the fear of loss of love. Every moment of purpose weakens the fear of old age. And every moment of spiritual awareness dissolves the fear of death. In the end, the message is simple yet profound. You are greater than your fears. They are only the shadows of the light you carry. When you walk toward truth, the shadows fall behind you. The author leaves us with this timeless reflection: you were born to express the divine, not to be imprisoned by illusion. Walk in faith, and the universe will walk with you.